See how well that works? Okay, everybody got phones off, mic'd up. I have got 5:30 on May the 20th, 2024 for a regular commissioners meeting. We've been having some meetings special. It's a regular meeting. I call this meeting to order. Invocation be led by Paul Smith. Pledge of allegiance be led by Robert Rayburn. If you'll stand, please.
Dear Heavenly Father, we come to you, ask your many blessings upon us and upon this town. We ask you, Lord, for the wisdom to work and bring forth the best ideas and the best doctrines for this community. We thank you, Lord, for the blessings, for the rain that you've given us over the last week. We ask you, if it be your will, we'd love to have some more of it. We ask these things in your Son's holy name, Lord. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Honor
the Texas flag.
I pledge allegiance to thee,
Texas, one state, under God,
one and indivisible. Thank y'all. We have, we'll open up with public comments. Anybody wanting to make a public comment? Nothing? If not, we'll move on to item number 1, discussion and action. We'll receive the audit and hear a presentation regarding the audit findings and final activities for financial year 23 approval. And sir, if you want to explain it to us?
Yes, sir. I guess I have to stand up. I think everybody could hear me, but that's all right. Yes, I'm Keith Neffendorf with Neffendorf and Blocker. This is my wife and partner, Tracy. So she actually did the audit. So if you have any questions, she will answer them. I'm just here to be the fall guy.
You're front man, yeah, okay.
All right. And the audit itself, as you recall, or maybe you don't, from last year's presentation, the audit complies with the Governmental Accounting Standard Board standards, and as part of those standards, we do the 2 sets of financial statements where we do the financials based on the GASB 34 model, a business type model, where we include all your capital assets, long-term debt, come up with a profit or loss just like a business would. And then there's the fund financial statements. The fund financial statements, as you recall, are the key for operating the city, because that's what you adopt the budget and set the tax rate on, okay? Because there are some differences between those two, like GASB 68 for your retirement, your pension liability, and GASB 75, that OPEB liability. And when I say that, that's also is through the TMRS, as you provide that retiree death benefit. That's called the OPEB. And there is a liability included in your financial statements for both of those. And you may or may not recall last year when I was here, you had a net pension asset, and I warned you that it's probably going to go to a liability, and it sure enough did. So you now have a net pension liability on your GASB 34 statements, okay? Because we knew that was coming because of higher inflation, and their investments didn't do as good as they did. But hopefully that'll come back a little bit this year. But like I said before, you got to remember, even though it went back to a net pension liability position, as far as what y'all budget and set the tax rate on, that's based on your contributions. And so that's what you have to remember. You don't have to factor in that liability. You just pay what she pays to the TMRS on a monthly basis for those contributions. That's what you budget and set the tax rate on, okay? All right, clear as mud. Anyway, the audit report itself, on pages, starting on page 1, the independent auditor's report, and right off the bat you have the opinion, and you got an unqualified opinion. In other words, that's the best you can get. In our opinion, the financial statements referred to above present fairly the financial position of the city as of October 31st, 2023, and changes in financial position in the year then ended. This is the standard auditor's clean opinion letter. That's what everybody strives for, and y'all got it. These financial statements themselves start over on page 10. And like I said before, the first two exhibits we're going to cover, the A1 and B1, those are the GASB 34 statements, so they will include all your assets, capital assets, depreciation, long-term debt, the pension liability, and come up with a profit and loss just like a business would. So you can see on page 10 the assets broken down in the two types that you have, the government activities, which of course is your general fund, and your special revenue funds and your debt service fund. The business type activities, of course, that's your utility fund, where it includes the operations of the electric, the water and sewer, landfill, and garbage. And you can see on page 10 the total assets for the city as a whole were $14,352,314. The next page shows your liabilities, and again, is broken down for the governmental business type activities. Includes your long-term debt, so your total liabilities were $5,692,750. So we had a net position, you can see at the very bottom, that would be the equivalent of stockholders' equity or retained earnings, as the city is in good financial shape with a net position of over $9 million, $9,038,171. And if you look under the liabilities, you can see the non-current, the net pension liability there, the total for the city was $528,792 liability. The same way for that OPEB liability is $106,000. So we have those recorded as liabilities on your GASB 34 statements. The next statement, the B1, is the statement of activities. That's the net income statement for the city. And it is just broken down by the same two, the governmental activities, the business type activities. And you can see the governmental activities had a net change, a deficit for the year of $581,259. The business type, the utility fund, had a net profit, net change positive, $572,000. So combined, overall last year on the GASB 34, the city lost $9,253. So you kept your nonprofit status. No, came out pretty close. We're starting on page 14 are the fund financial statements. And these, of course, this next section, these are the ones that are more important for operating the city. They're done on the fund basis. That's what you all adopted budget, set the tax rate off. And of course, on the fund statements, the general fund is your major operating fund, and your other funds, like I said before, the special revenue fund and the debt service fund. So you can see the general fund at the end of the year, the assets exceed the liabilities. You had a fund balance of $267,150. And combined for all the governmental funds, the assets exceed the liabilities. You had a fund balance of $282,395. If you take that fund balance to page 15, the $282,395, these are all the items that are used to get us from the fund statements to the GASB 34. And like I said, those are listed there. Of course, the major items are you include your capital assets minus your long-term debt and accumulated depreciation, and add back current year capital outlays, long-term debt principal payments, and subtract your depreciation expense, and come up with the net change or net position under the GASB 34, $1,258,049. Page 16 is these changes, revenues and expenditures, and changes in fund balance. And you can see the general fund last year, the expenditures exceeded the revenues. You had a deficit of $1,334,000. You transferred in from the utility fund, so you reduced the deficit to $100,614. The other funds, the special revenue funds, the revenues, expenditures exceeded the revenues by $17,163. So after your bond issuance and the bond issuance costs transfer out, you had a net change of $6,837. So overall, last year, the governmental funds had a net change, a deficit of $93,777. And once again, the next page shows those changes in your items that used to reconcile the GASB 34 numbers, and you can see the items current year capital outlay, long-term debt principal payments, subtract your depreciation expense, and adjust for your GASB 68 and GASB 75 liabilities, come up with a net change, the deficit under the GASB 34, $581,259. Page 18, the next exhibit is for your utility fund. That just shows a separate accounting or statement on your utility fund showing your assets on that page, over $12,250,000, and then the next page on page 19 shows your liabilities at $4,670,000, so a net position $7,780,122 for the utility fund. Utility fund, of course, is in great shape, and it is the one that's your money maker where you transfer to the general fund for your operations. That's reflected on page 20, showing your operating revenues for the utility fund of almost $5,955,707. So your operating income on page 21 was a little over $1 million, $1,070,545. So after you subtract your investment earnings and deduct your investment expense and add your capital contributions and the transfers out, you still showed a net change positive of $572,006. So you can see even after transferring out over $1 million to the general fund, you still showed a positive flow in the utility fund of $572,000. Page 22 just reflects the statement of cash flows. It shows where your money is generated and what it's used for. You generate out of utility operations cash flow of $1,942,000, transfers out $583,000, and what you used it for, acquiring capital assets $893,000, and paying bond interest and principal payments. So in the end, your net increase in cash in utility funds was $469,504. The note starting on page 24, just additional disclosure required by generally accepted accounting principles. First part of the note just goes through and explains the use of GASB 34 and fund financial statements that I've already done. The notes I need to point out start on page 29 and 30. These have to do with the deposits and investments. The city is required to comply with the Public Funds Investment Act. At the end of the year, the city's deposits were secured by FDIC coverage and or pledged collateral. And on the next page, on page 30, shows you temporary investments with CDs through the bank, and also some investments with the local governmental investment pools, Techstar and Logic. And of course, those local governmental investment pools aren't covered by FDIC insurance and or pledged securities, but they have built-in safeguards, and they are in accordance with the Public Funds Investment Act, and therefore all your deposits and investments complied with the Public Funds Investment Act. And at midway or over 2/3 of the way down the page, it just shows you do have some restricted cash. These are accounts that have to be set aside for the Texas Water Development Board escrow debt and the loan forgiveness programs, and then for debt service, and those restricted accounts are maintained separately and accounted for $223,770 at the end of the year. Page 31 shows the summary of changes in your property, plant, and equipment accounts. Of course, last year you bought the real estate for $650,000. You made some improvements to the water and sewer plant. And then at the bottom of the page is the governmental activities, where you had some improvements to the swimming pool and some street paving improvements. Then it also shows the related amounts for your depreciation accounts. Bottom of page 32 shows your Governmental activities, last year you issued 674,000 Series 2023 limited tax notes. And at the next page, on page 33, shows under the two outstanding amounts on the certificate of obligation for the utility fund, you made your requirement debt service payments, you paid principal amounts of 140,000. So that just shows you complied with those debt service agreements, and you made the required principal payments and interest. And then on page 34, it just gives a summary of those limited tax notes and the utility fund principal interest payments and the payments that are going to be due under those agreements for the next 5 years and thereafter. Page 35 starts the retirement system notes provided to us by the TMRS. It just goes through and gives a summary plan description, the benefits provided, contributions made, and then on page, go through the investments, what they invest in, and then on page 38, it has a separate schedule showing for your city the estimate the total pension liability was $4,313,000. You had assets down there of $3,784,000. So it was a liability at the end of 22 of $528,792. And they use a 6.5% discount rate, and you can see if that rate gives a little chart there. It decreased to 5.75%. The liability jumped with $1,109,000. Where the increase, you'd have a net liability of only $52,000. And the same goes for starting on page 38 and goes on to 39 for that OPEB. That is that supplemental death benefits provided through the TMRS. And that's where they pay, upon the death, $7,500 death benefits paid to the retiree. And that benefit costs you, it goes through the benefits and contributions, as last year, the contributions for that benefit were only $8,557. And it also gives the actuarial assumptions and what the changes on page 41 shows the liability for that death benefit amount for $106,001. And that is a benefit that's not a funded benefit like the retirement system, so it's an unfunded plan, so you just, whatever you pay to them as contributions each year through your monthly expense, that's what you're limited to your pension expense or OPEB expense for that year. So it's an unfunded liability, but it doesn't cost you very much. And then finally, the other notes are just standard disclosures required by general, like I said before, it just goes through and give you a summary of those notes and the additional amounts included in your financial statements. The other key schedule, and it was on page 45, that just shows your budget to actual results for the general fund. You can see last year your revenues compared to your budget exceeded the budget, so you had positive variance of $231,443 for the revenues, and then on the expenditure side, after your budget amendments, your actual expenditures were only $620 less than budget amounts. So overall, you had planned the net deficit of $1,566,000. It actually turned to be the deficit only $1,334,000. So you had a favorable variance to the budget for revenues and expenditures. After that, page 46, this is the 10-year summary of your retirement system liability. And I tell people all the time, the key items to look at here are items C and D. As you can see, you're still, even though you went from an asset to a liability position last year, you're still funded at 87.74%. And you can see over the last period of years, they have been running in the high 90s to a little over 100, so it's still staying adequately funded at 87.74%. And all the cities that were in the system, most of them are in that 88% range like y'all are. They went from an asset to a liability And that's shown, on your contributions are shown on page 48, 49, what the contributions were. You've made your required contributions each year for that retirement benefit. And then on page 50, it shows those assumptions, and like I pointed out last year, you can see halfway through the page what they're still using as inflation is 2.5%. We haven't seen that in a while. And also the investment rate of return at 6.75%, which is also high for that year. That's why you jump from an asset to a liability. And 51 and 52 is that OPEB, the Supplemental Death Benefits Fund liability, and it just shows the amount of liability in the year, $106,001, and of course it's not funded, so it's an unfunded liability. Then finally, in the back of the book, last year, or maybe you'll recall, the first in the letter starts on page 58. For this year, the internal control used over financial reporting. We tested it during our regular audit. We found no major material weaknesses. And the second part of it, we had a test for compliance with laws, contracts, and grants, and we found no instances of non-compliance. So both of those were good. Then we gave you an update last year, as you recall, or maybe you didn't. We had a couple of findings in regards to internal control. And the first one, or actually both of them, one of them had to do with the operating account, and that allocation has been corrected. That action was taken this fiscal year. And the second one was the use of the full accrual method of accounting, recording the material receivables and payables, and that action also was taken by the city this year. So both of those items, status of the prior year findings, both of them were corrected. Finally, at the back, the loose letter in your end of your book. This is a letter that's required by the Governmental Accounting Standards Board, where we, the independent auditor, have to provide you, the mayor, and commissioners, the governing body of the city, these items that are listed here. Significant audit findings, of course, we've adopted all the appropriate Governmental Accounting Standards Board standards, comply with them. There were no difficulties encountered performing the audit, no corrected or incorrect misstatements, no disagreements with management. And finally, on the next page, at the bottom of the page, as usual, even though we had no material weaknesses or major findings, we always have recommendations for improvements. Of course, under the current year, last year, the sales tax revenues, some of those months were booked into the utility fund, and of course, there are always a general fund item. So we just recommend that you have to review each year, each month that sales tax revenue gets booked into the general fund. And of course, we've updated the fiscal. We still recommend that actual fiscal inventory be taken of the fixed assets. We provide the city with a copy of the depreciation schedule when they go through it and tell us which items are going. So that's basically it. There's a clean audit report. The city's still in good financial shape. We always appreciate the cooperation and the job Donna does of getting the records and the information to us. And so, if you have any questions, shoot.
Could you repeat that?
Yes, I can go over it again. I would. One thing I don't know if y'all are aware of, I want to always point this out. Okay, last year y'all issued $674,000 in limited tax notes. You know, when you bought that land. Okay, under those limited tax notes, if you go in and read your ordinance and stuff, it says it's secured by all the taxable property in the city, and that you're also supposed to be levying a tax, a debt service tax, for that, to cover that principal interest payment. But y'all have never done that.
So we could do that on top of our property tax? It would be a
Yes.
separate item?
Yes.
Okay.
But see, but the financial advisors, of course, they're just in the business of selling you bonds, they want to get you the big. They always fail to, and say that, look, if you're issuing limited tax notes, hence the term tax, you're supposed to levy and collect the tax to make that principal interest payment. If you don't want to do that, then you should be levying combination tax and revenue notes, so that therefore, then you could, if you want to pay the principal interest out of the utility fund, then you have those. That's what you did for the Series 18 and 19 when you had the Water Development Board. Those were revenue obligations, certificates of obligation, and those are payable from utility fund revenues. Okay, I just want you to understand, you see what, you get
Yes.
that?
Yeah, we'll look into that.
Limited tax notes, that is supposed to be secured by the taxable property, and you're supposed to levy a debt service tax to cover the principal and interest payments. If you don't want to do that, then you should go back and ask them to change it to where it's a revenue.
Revenue,
Right.
yeah, okay.
Because trust me, we've had several of our cities in the past that have done the same thing. That the financial advisors didn't tell them limited tax notes are supposed to be supported by debt or tax levy. And if you don't want that, then you should go back and amend the ordinance saying it can be secured either by levying a tax or by revenues from the utility fund.
Okay, we'll look into it. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
Wasn't aware of that.
But it does, since you did issue the limited tax notes, if you did want to levy a tax, you could figure out how many pennies that would add to your tax rate and pay the principal interest with the tax.
Did not know that.
Because we have several cities that do that. And remember, when you have debt service tax, that's not subject to rollback.
Yeah, we'll check with our tax assessor collector and see what our options might be there. But if we're not, we need to change that to a revenue.
Right.
No,
Yeah, the security has to be, then it has to be utility fund, secured by utility fund revenues.
thank you. Any questions? Any further discussion? Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you all, appreciate it.
Thank you.
Good job as usual, as always.
Yep. See you later. Thank you all, appreciate it.
Yeah. I'll accept a motion on this to approve the audit for financial year 22, 23.
I'll make the motion that we approve the audit for FY 2023 for the city of Mason.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Smith seconds the motion. Further discussion?
I was looking for the question I was going to ask. I lost it.
I'm sorry?
I was looking for the question that I was going to ask, and I lost it. But Donna it was a question for Donna anyway, regarding their findings.
We can wait a moment if you want to see if you can find it. She'll be back in.
I guess I can find it. He went through it pretty fast.
I know. So do we not get these ahead of time, or?
We did not, we haven't the last couple of years, that's something that we can request. We used to get them in advance, of course, that y'all would have a chance to look over them.
Yeah, I'd like to get it advanced, because, I mean, they flew through it, and, I'm sitting there trying to keep up and
I
follow.
know, me too, and I always appreciated getting in advance either, because I always made my notes when I got to the meeting, so, and there was a question, but it had to do with Donna, and of course, everything they requested from Donna, she corrected. I was just gonna ask her, because it went from, well, I can't find it now.
Patty, do we have a timetable that we have to pass this by? Is there a deadline or anything? I know we do have a motion, but I just wondered if we could table this and then schedule it for the next agenda if it's not.
There's something with Texas Water Development Board.
If I'm not mistaken, it had to be before this is accepted for the new contract or anything. If I'm not mistaken, Coach Smith already gave a second motion.
We can take an amendment, or we can, somebody wants to amend the motion.
I mean, it was a favorable report. I just request that
Right.
we get a chance to see it earlier next time so we can notate our questions, because, flying through this thing 90 miles an hour and then asking if we have any questions at the end.
Yeah,
By the time you write a question down, he's 12 pages
Yeah.
down the road.
yeah, that's what happened, but I can ask my question to Donna, it's no big deal. It was just a matter of me understanding what they had written, but you're right, we do need to get these ahead of time so we can review them before, because he went through it really fast. And it is a good report. I mean, the bottom line is, we're in good
favorable,
financial. So we need to go ahead and vote.
If there's no further discussion, I'll call for a vote. All those in favor of the motion to approve the financial audit for financial year 2023, raise your right hand. All those opposed, same sign, 5-4, 0 against. Moving on to number 2, and we'll try to address that next year and see if we can get it ahead of schedule, at least a week. Would a week be enough, you think, Michael? Would
What's
a
that?
week? We got it a week ahead of time?
Oh, that's,
And I think he brought it tonight, or Patty, what do you got?
even a few days, as long
Yeah.
as, we can review it.
Okay.
Yeah.
If it was available.
Okay, item number 2 is consider and take possible action to award construction contract relating to TXCD-BG CDV 21-0333, and this is a Smith Lift Station Improvement Project contingent upon the TDA approval. Brandon, you want to make some comments on that? Explain where we're at?
Yeah, for the record, Brandon Neese, the EHT. Right now, I believe we're going to ask to table the acceptance of the bid. We're still waiting on some qualifications from I believe, the lowest bidder on the packet. From Texas Quality Services. They came in quite a bit underneath everybody else, and we just want to do our due diligence to make sure that they are well qualified to do the project. So we're going to ask if we can table it till next meeting.
Okay, our timeline won't be affected with TWA.
What was it, January? I'll let you go on that one.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Ken with Public Management, and the only thing I would say is that, we're a little bit behind schedule because we had to rebid this thing out. Your deadline is January 31, 2025. So we table tonight, we award next month. We're at about 6 months, maybe 6-7 months. So
Construction?
you can ask for extension. I don't want to have to do that, but that is a possibility. But I'd prefer to just get it done on time.
So you said about 6 months construction period?
That's what we're hoping. Optimistic. So just keep that in mind. But if they're not ready to make a recommendation, I don't know who these bid out.
So what are the concerns, and what are we checking into in terms of, and how much lower was the bid, by like 30-40%, or?
Texas Quality Services came in at $643K, and the second closest one was $778K. So, looking at a pretty significant jump between first and second. I know they're limited on some of their services and some of their experience, so EHT is making sure we go back to some of their references just to kind of get reassurance on some of their qualifications.
All right, thank you.
And if that lower bid would get us close to being within budget, time we had engineer cost,
No.
no? How much over budget are you forecasting?
Your budget for this, the construction was 265 grant money and 20,000 match. So that's a total of 285 grand.
Holy cow, double it? That's if we take the lowest
So
bid.
if you take the lowest bidder, that's correct.
Okay, so Donna, we had 500, we had 400, and then we got 350 from the COG grant.
Oh, I don't know about that one. Y'all got money coming in from somewhere else?
We have money set aside, yes, sir.
Okay.
From the landfill project. So there's 400 plus we got the 375, so that puts us at 775,000.
What was the 375 from?
I'm sorry, 350 from the COG.
Okay, you mean from TDA?
Yes.
But you got to remember, it was a total of a $350,000 grant. The construction budget was $265,000 plus your match pledged was $20,000 on that, on the construction budget line item. 285 total.
Okay, and that does what we can spend out of the COG money from the grant.
The only thing you've spent so far would have been for administration and for engineering so far.
Mayor, COG is not a part of this.
Correct.
It's the Texas Department of Agriculture, not COG, TDA.
I thought we applied through COG for that grant last year, but it's through Texas Department of Agriculture. We got
Yeah, but that was a that was-
350.
This would have been prior, this would have been applied for several years back because they just awarded it last year. Remember their biennial cycles.
Right.
We did apply for another grant last year. But
So-
this one would have
This
been,
one was applied for in like 18 or 19.
no, probably right around 2020 or 2021 timeframe.
That's correct.
So the construction budget was 250.
260 plus your match already for this particular grant was 20,000. So you have 285 allocated for the grant to go toward that. So anything else above that is basically additional grant, which can be in the form of these other funds that you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay? Does that make sense?
Beginning
So
to.
you're saying 400 plus 285 get you to 685, and the bid came in at what, 640? Something like that, yeah. It's just a matter of EHT is now checking. I think one of the concerns was that they haven't done a lift station project, right? So that's what they're checking into to make sure they're going to be able to do this. The only thing I mentioned, Brandon, is that, when you don't go with the lowest bid, TDA, you're going to have to give them a lot of documentation as to why you didn't do that, right?
Okay.
I mean, there's always circumstances and there's always explanations, but we have to
Right.
make sure we notate
So
that.
who's checking the references, you?
This is the engineer, yeah, Colton.
The engineer is.
Does this
yeah.
have a performance bond on it?
Yes, sir.
Is the deadline to be 100% complete with construction? Is that the deadline?
Yes, sir.
And 100% complete, accepted, everything?
Right. You get 60 days after that to turn in, like to do final draws and things like that, and to hold a final public hearing. So there is some things that can be done after the 60 days. After the deadline. But if we're not going to be done with construction, and let's just say we award next month, and we're into November, I'm going to go ahead and start initiating it to get some extra time.
Extension.
Because we don't want to get to where we're in December and we realize we're not going to, because then they're going to frown upon that. We need to get, if we're going to do an extension request, then we would do
What did
that.
what did the bid document say when you bid it? Did it have a deadline that regardless of when we opened the bids, you got to be through on this day?
I'm not really sure on that.
That's pretty critical.
Yes, sir. Usually they do. Now, I'm not sure because the HT is handling the bidding, but usually that's what's put in there is that.
Which means that's your job to hire another 200 people if that's what you got to do. You can't, that's what I'm saying. If-
Oh, their job, that's correct.
That's
In
not
the
you,
contract
but I mean,
documents,
if the
they're-
contractor knows I got to finish in January and I turn the bid in November, I got to get me some people,
Yeah.
you know? So that's really the monkey falls on them.
Yes.
And if it's a performance bonded job, we got insurance standing behind it too.
They're always these TDA, everything that is put in the bid package comes straight from TDA. So yes, there's a performance bond, which we run into every once in a while. The guy runs out of business, performance bond comes in and hires somebody else to finish the job. Okay, that happens.
Right.
That's exactly what happens. And within the contract documents, it does tell them how many days they have. I just don't know
Oh,
what
it
that
has,
number
it
is.
doesn't have a drop dead day. It has how many days they
Yes,
have.
and
So
just
we're
re-
still giving them, right now, those days are not shrinking as the calendar moves up.
Correct.
So
Plus,
they-
there's always,
if you told them they had
right.
200 days and it doesn't start till November, we're going to be hard pressed
Right,
to get it in.
No, once the contract is executed, then those days kick in. And of course, there can be allowances for rainy days
Right,
and
right,
stormy
the usual
days.
stuff.
Yeah.
But
Until you
they don't
start-
they have a finish line that's moving at this point.
Once you.
They do.
They
We-
do.
we don't.
That's correct, yeah. In other words, let's just say we award next month, it's probably gonna take 30 days to get construction documents back and get everything signed. So whatever that date is, the notice to proceed is when their clock starts to tick on how many days they got. I just don't remember how many days they put in to allow for the work.
Are you allowed to, I'm trying to think what the penalty is if you don't hit that deadline.
Y'all, there's liquidated damages.
Sir?
Liquidated damages. Like, in other words,
No, you're right.
yeah, so that's in there also. Like, let's just say they're 100, whatever the number was, 120 days. We're beyond that. The city does have the option to start charging liquidated damages.
And y'all have
Right.
compared all three, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Y'all have compared all three bids, and the only concerns were the references on the lower bid, and,
Well, we've actually got 6 bids.
okay.
Well, some of them were in the middle. I mean, some of them.
Some are way out.
Million, no, I would say you rebid it again and hope for the best, but, so that, yeah, there was a total of 5 or 6 bids that came down. The bid tab, y'all should have had a copy of the bid tab. Did they get that copy of the bid tab that Colby sent?
No, I
Then
haven't.
apparently,
I was there when the bids were.
yeah, the engineer was supposed to send you guys the bid tab that y'all should have had available to you.
But this grant, I'm trying to understand this, this is a community block development grant, correct?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
But it's funded through Texas Agriculture,
Yeah, now, the only thing.
Texas Department of Agriculture?
The only way the COG comes into play is when you first submit your application and the COG scores everybody in your region. And you were one of the highest scorers, which is why you got funded
So
for
therefore,
this.
it's processed on down the road.
But it's
Okay.
still, the COG is
I thought I was
out, they do
totally-
not,
Not
they don't,
quite totally confused, somewhat.
yes. Then it is totally run by Texas Department of
Yeah, I
Agriculture.
knew we kept getting the things from TDA, so.
Yes,
Okay.
correct.
And so when we have those numbers, Donna, can you crunch numbers for us as far as what we have available, set aside for it? And if we're going to go over what is available with the TDA money and our 400,000? Because I think the commission needs to know if we're going basically over money that we don't have
Yeah.
available.
And did Colton send you the bid tab? You said no. Then I'll forward it to you and Donna and you can get it to them, okay?
How many working days was in the contract?
That's what I'm saying. They bid that out, and I'm not sure.
You don't know? Okay.
I don't know for right now.
Okay.
But so whether they
But
put
whatever it is, just give me a gut call. Are we not, if I awarded it this afternoon, are we able to make that deadline, you think? But
yeah, well, that's according to the engineers. They're saying 6 months.
Yeah, but did the contractor give you days, or he just knows you got X
No,
number?
he's just bid right now. It's just he's bidding on what
On-
the engineers set up in the contract.
Which is what I'm asking you.
Yeah, now that I'm just saying I don't.
What's that,
know.
180, what's that, 180 days in?
That's what I'm saying. I don't have the bid.
I'm not sure on the exact number.
You're talking about
The commissioners talked about what did the bid say.
How many days were given to these people to
Yeah,
complete this
and
work?
I'll pull
Yes,
it out
yes.
of their bid documents and I'll send it to them.
Well, the big question is, are we already outside of that window?
Not yet. We're close. But that just depends. Brandon's given me an estimate of 6 months. He doesn't, that's just, he's thinking that that's
That's
about
just
it.
optimistic, we think, in 6 months on the construction side.
That's no rain, no,
Yeah, that's exactly.
no
right.
boat getting hit by a bridge.
Perfect situation.
Yes, you're correct about that. That's
Yeah.
right. He's given me, and so what, we're in May right now, so we June, so
Well, we misfired on.
it's
on the-
optimistic. It's optimistic anyway, but it's not the end of the world. You get a
If we get it done
You're only
quick.
gonna need, if, let's just say it's coming down to that, we're only talking about 2 or 3 months. at the most. Surely, something's gone horribly wrong if it's more than that.
Yeah.
Okay.
So then, if it's tabled, we need to get back relatively quickly, right? Once you,
One of the main reasons also is Golden was on vacation last week, and he's back in the office this week, and I believe he's working on all the qualifications of it, so he should have something to y'all pretty quick.
okay.
And I can ask him if he'll send y'all the bid tabulations as well.
Yeah, I mean, I know you guys don't like to have special meetings and everything, but I mean, it would be helpful if they could give a
We
recommendation.
live in
We're pretty well used to it.
That's all we do is,
We just had 4 last week.
and this is really special. This is a real special.
It's a slow week.
But if Coleman can give you a letter of award recommendation
Yeah.
in the next week or two, and then y'all have a meeting and just come in and award, that's even better. Then we can kind of speed up.
Okay.
I have to do a pre-construction conference, no way around that.
Right.
I've got to tell them everything that the grant requires. These
Right.
guys got to tell them everything that is actually required in the contract.
Where do you have that meeting?
Anywhere, City Hall, that can easily just be a
Okay.
construction meeting. We usually just schedule it at a time that's convenient for myself, the engineers, and the contractor. And you guys are welcome, you're
Okay.
welcome to show up.
Okay.
But literally, what we're doing is going through the contract.
Right.
Talking about the things you just mentioned.
Yeah.
Performance bond, how many days do you have? You know, who's supposed to be, who's the supervisor on site for them? Who's the engineer that they contact? Who's the representative they need to get a hold of? Those kind of things are on. And I'm talking to them about labor standards, things that are related to the grant.
Right. Yeah.
My guess is we're gonna have a special meeting between, here in the near future that we can,
Yeah, we
Address
just
this
get.
issue.
we
That's
just
what
get
we
warmed
do.
up this
yeah, I know it.
Okay, I will accept a motion.
I make a motion that we table the bid.
I'll second it.
Okay, have a motion made by Commissioner Velez, seconded by Commissioner Keller to table the action on this Texas Community Development Block Grant, CDV 21-0333. It's the Smith Station lift, or Smith Street lift station. Further discussion? No further discussion. All those in favor, raise your right hand. We have 5-4-0 against. Thank you. Thank you, gentlemen.
Guys, good night.
Thank you.
Thank you, appreciate it.
Appreciate you coming in.
Brady, we can get you the bid. Thank you, guys.
Okay, next item on the agenda is item number 3, discussion action is consider and approve, deny City of Mason water conservation and drought contingency plan dated May 2024. Brandon, you want to get up and make the presentation on that? You have that in your packet there.
I didn't print me off a copy of it, so.
Yeah, if you just want to go over the highlights and then we'll have questions, I'm sure.
Yeah, okay. So a little bit of background about the WCP, DCP documents is they are required by TCEQ, TWDB for any city organization that receives any kind of funding from Texas Water Development Board. And says that the WCPs have to be given to the city or done by the city every 5 years, every calendar 5 years, not fiscal 5 years. So last time that we did one was in 19. We did one earlier this year, just a quick draft, because Water Development Board was needing a draft because of the funding for the HMO project. Still receiving funds on it, or received the funds on it. Going through this packet, First few pages, obviously, table of contents. Starting on page 1, basically it breaks down utility profile, number of system users. It goes through from the last time that one was prepared for the city of Mason to present, so 19 to 23. And then it does a projection on the number of system users. I believe somebody had a question on that. Okay.
Yeah.
Shoot.
So when I look at it, it shows our population declining. And I would argue that that's not the case. So I guess my question is, where did the data come from? How did we come up with, 2134 from,
100 lives.
Okay, a little bit of background on that. Every year that these WCPs are done, a copy gets sent to the entity, which is City of Mason. One gets sent to TCQ, one gets sent to Texas Water Development Board, one gets sent to EPA, and one gets sent to the Region F Water Planning Group, which the Hill Country's in Region F all the way up to San Angelo. So what they do with the past years of all these numbers that everybody turns in is they have a methodology on their website that you can actually go to and see how they project these numbers. And if you look at the bottom of that table 2, at the very bottom, you can see where I put source 2021 regional water plan. So all these tables are pulled directly from Texas Water Development Board and Water Use Group, which is Region F. So that's where all of these numbers come from.
okay.
And
For the hill country, therefore, they're not projecting any growth. Seems kind of odd.
well, they are more to the east, obviously, getting closer to the Leander, Cedar Park, Liberty Hill area and all that, but I don't know why they're not projecting the growth this far out. I just did one for City of Miles, and theirs was the exact same thing. And they're about half the size of Mason, and they're closer to San Angelo. They're literally 12 miles from San Angelo, and it
Right.
shows they're not growing at all.
So in this, I'm going to ask you a quick question.
Yes, sir.
Just because you're on that page. Okay, so it says that under what we're doing right here is we're preparing a water conservation and non-point source protection. And we're preparing this, all of our plans are based upon our population growth, okay? Or not growing one. One dies, one's born. One dies, one's born for the next, till 2070. I find that's what the basis, all of this is being on that basis right there. If we're gonna create a conservation plan of how, and I think there's some mention of that in here as it says it does. The reality of it is if this thing, if all of a sudden we're sitting a year from now at 2,400 people, our conservation plan is a different conservation plan than it is if we sit at 2,134.
Well, that's why in the back of this conservation plan, there's a section for BMPs, best management, right?
Yeah.
Best management practices. And that's where you can kind of use your conservation plan to kind of overshoot. Like when you're building a wastewater treatment plant or building a water treatment plant, TCQ makes you build it 20% higher of what your right now population is, that due to growth or increase. And that's where you can integrate your own stuff into your BMPs. That way, if you do somehow gain 600 people, then that's what you can start going off of your BMPs, and then you can just bring it into the meeting and amend it, and then adopt the new one, if that makes sense.
That makes sense if I'm building something, okay? If I'm
Yes.
gonna build a water tower, and I was gonna make it so big, and now I'm gonna make it that big plus 20% more. However, if we're trying to implement conservation measures, and we are trying to figure out, are we gonna try to capture water? Are we gonna try to drill water? Are we gonna try to buy land? All those things, you can't just, well, let's just change that. Let's go buy the well tomorrow. Our BMPs are gonna be a little harder to implement than it would be if they were just something you could just change pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
And I
Does
see
that,
what
does that leave us exposed a little bit?
I don't really see that way because these change yearly.
Yeah.
So, everything can be amended, and who's to say the numbers that Water Development Board and Water Use Group get from 2023, that for people that the 2024 WCPs are due, these numbers could be obsolete. You know, then you're pretty much starting over.
Yeah.
Yeah, and well,
So
I
it's
guess,
just giving you a good baseline.
I guess what bothered me was, so it says, 2024 determined 2,228 persons is projected to reach 2134 that's a decrease of, 94 people? And based on what I see in the bank, I think that's just, I think it's bad data. I see us growing. I don't see us declining by 94
Well, it is a state
people.
website.
Huh?
It is a state website.
Yeah, well,
So in 2 years, if we're seeing tremendous growth, and this conservation plan is basically useless at that point, we can adopt a new one. So
well,
we're
but
not
I
buying,
think
we're
It
not,
just said, the state just says that you have to have a new one every 5 years.
yeah,
Regardless whether you
we're
wait
not committed.
a year and a half and try to amend it and
yeah.
right.
do another one.
And at the end of the day, I mean, on the next page, it gives a target of, 225 gallons per, or I think it's,
Per utility customer?
I'm sorry, on page 12.
Yeah, the
It
next
says-
page is just,
yeah. It says the
per
projections,
year.
total per capita is below 225 gallons per capita per day, by the end. So whether it's 2134 or 2228, it's going to be based on that 225 per, right?
yeah.
Is that the way I
GPCD.
read that?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
That's just stating what the city of Mason's goal is.
Okay.
It's not set in stone that you have to get it there. That's just your,
It's a
that's
goal.
just your goal.
Yeah, and if
What
you're
you
going to
wanna
set a
do.
goal, you go for it, right?
Yes, sir.
So, okay.
I just wonder, because this information comes from the US Census data, if the numbers we're getting is the city numbers and not the whole county numbers.
No, there's way more than that in the county.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying.
You're-
And I
you're
think
pushing
you're
close to
talking-
5,000
You're
population in the
talking
county.
growth, city and county, and I think this is just city.
Correct.
Oh, I'm talking city. I'm just talking about the people that I know moved in, and this 2228 was based on 24.
How many customers do we have, Patty? Do you know off the top of your head?
There should be about 1,280 connections,
Yeah.
roughly.
So it's 1,031 for residents and 230 for
Commercial.
commercial.
2 people per
No
connection, I think.
industrial, no
What
institutional.
they're averaging roughly.
Yeah. And, so can I just go through and ask my questions?
Go
instead
for
of
it.
you?
Yes, sir.
So on page 12, it says water audits will be conducted annually. Do we
Go
do
by his
that?
pages.
Huh?
It's easier to go by his pages, I think, or do you have it both ways there?
What is yours, page
I'm on
3?
page 12.
It's 12, yeah. Do we do the audits annually?
You can say yes and you can say no. Because every year, a water loss audit is due to Texas Water Development Board. So if you do that document, which we did it, EHT did it for the city of Mason this year, just to give you a background on that, Texas Water Development Board has a series of, I believe it's 5 documents it runs through, and everything has to be done in sequential order. You first start with your water use audit, or your water use survey, which basically breaks down what well 1 pump, well 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, how much water left the HMO plant, how much water went to backwash to the collection system, so on and so forth. Basically accounting for every drop of water that is produced by the city of Mason.
Right.
And then it moves to the water loss audit, which really gets into the nuts and bolts of, how much was lost in water leaks this year, how much was lost to backwash, how much was lost to meter leaks, so on and so forth. And then it goes to a utility profile, which you see the utility profile is an appendix in this. And then it goes to utility goals, and then ultimately we're at the water conservation plan.
Okay. Yeah, because I read somewhere where tried to keep the water loss at 15% or under,
Yes, sir.
And-
I think
and-
Water Development Board's magic number is like 17%.
Okay.
Is what they kind of like.
Yeah, that's on page 13 where it's the city's goal for unaccounted for water use is 15% or less. And so we are doing that today, or we're not, or,
Yes, it's in, further in the report there.
Yeah.
I think it shows each
and we're
year
doing
what
it
our
annually.
calculated water loss is.
Yeah,
And we're
so
doing
that
it
should be in
annually.
the
Yes,
utility
annually.
profile somewhere.
But there
I'm
are
used to
some,
scrolling it on a computer.
there are some rules on that.
Get to
that-
it quick.
I mean, we're not, and Robert has mentioned this before, I think, and I'd ask John about it. We're not really keeping up with like what the fire department uses. Although those records could be done because when you fill a fire truck, you know how many gallons you filled in it, that kind of thing. Estimating the loss from flushing the fire hydrants or a plug on the end of one that doesn't have fire hydrant close to it. Those could be estimated better than what we're doing
And that's all
now.
this really is, a rough estimate. I mean, there's really no way unless, like, there are some cities that when they go out and flush a fire hydrant, they hook a meter to it. That way they know, and they've got a log that they can go through and say, all right, we flushed 1,500 gallons from this one, 1,700 from here, 2,200 from here, and then they can tally it up at the end of the year and have a really good estimate of where they're at. Now, where you really lose a lot of water, and it's really hard to estimate it, is on main breaks.
Yeah.
Because you don't know if you're losing 10,000 or 100,000, and you kind of shoot for the middle and say 75,000 or something like
Because
that.
you got to do that for TCEQ, right?
Yes, sir.
You
Well,
gotta estimate
that's
it
all
on
part
each
of the
one of
water
them.
loss audit
Right,
as well.
right.
Well,
Water
and-
loss
But
audit's
you
got-
should be able to develop a pattern over the next couple of days of what you're pulling, what you've had to pull down. You could get a pretty good guess. I mean,
Yes.
you're not gonna.
And that's what I usually do. I sit down and, because I know what it takes to flush a fire hydrant, and I know roughly how much you're gonna lose
But a
on
main
the
break,
main
who knows?
break.
If it happens at 2 in the morning, it's a lot
It's
more leaking.
obviously gonna run longer
Right.
before somebody finds it than the one that happens at 2 o'clock in the afternoon.
But having said that, okay, if you develop a conservation plan, then your conservation plan should have that taken into consideration. That you're going to lose those waters. You're going to lose.
Yes, absolutely.
How many water? I mean, you almost have to calculate how many main water breaks are we getting a year in Mason.
And all that's inside the water loss audit.
Okay.
All these, when I said everything's done in sequential order.
Yeah.
It basically auto-populates to the next document, auto-populates to the next document, auto-populates to the next document. And then it figures up different values on each page, like how much you lost on main breaks and how much you did on flushing and fire and, so on and so forth. But yeah, the Water Development Board website, it's good, but it's hard. It's really hard to navigate. It's hard to figure out what they're asking because they use real vague terms in it. And there's a lot of time on Google, searching and looking for different things. But a lot of the stuff that's in, or not a lot, but probably 99% of the stuff that's in this water conservation plan came directly from the City of Mason staff or Water Use Group website, which is all Texas Water Development Board.
Let's say that we do get in a shortcoming. We're sure having shortcomings of water. We're not either our wells just start slowing down a little bit,
Got that loss on page 4.
and we can't just
yeah.
For each year.
order water out of the sky. We run the risk of being short of water.
Well,
And I think there was a conservation note in here that says, well, what we can do is we can charge more money for the water as a conservation measure. Wasn't that
Yes.
what that was said, I believe?
yes.
And I love that in theory, but I think if they're gonna wash dishes with the water running, they're probably gonna wash it. I don't see that as a city conservation measure. I see that as what we put out in little brochures and say, this is a good way to reduce your water bill. But I don't see that if we're short citywide, how can we raise the bill and expect them to make up the water
Yeah.
with money?
Now, I remember back in 2011 and 2015, when we were in the horrible, horrible drought.
Yeah.
We pretty much told everybody that the car wash is gonna be closed. We closed both car washes in town. There were several things that made a lot of people unhappy, but basically, I mean.
No
if-
filling the
if you
swimming
don't-
pool.
Yeah, no filling the swimming pools.
Yeah.
No water in
No
the
outside
park.
watering, period.
Yeah.
Not even hand watering. But back then, City of Mason's wells were pumping 35 to close to 40 million gallons a month, where in a normal summer, you're anywhere from 28 to 30 million gallons a month. And I mean, those 2 years were horrible. But some of that was taken into account in this, you know, you can go through and read some of those line items on, you know, car washes can't, you know, on different levels of.
But that
of
doesn't, all that
mandatory
does is say,
restrictions.
we don't have enough water, so you don't spend any, but that still doesn't get us any water. Are there
Oh,
any,
exactly.
are there any conservation measures that are being taken about, every rancher out here is building shallow stock tanks on every slope they can find. Why? If I need water, I need to have some available to me. There are a lot of other conservation measures. City of Marble Falls is in the process of treating their wastewater and putting it back into the potable water system to get treated one more time.
The city of Abilene has a Hamby WRF facility right now that treats close to 50 million gallons a month of wastewater. And when it leaves their plant, it's almost at potable water. And they discharge that into Lake Phantom Hill, which Lake Phantom Hill is where City of Abilene draws all their drinking water from, and then they process it again.
Yeah, but, yeah, say that, Patty, you kind of go, oh, I know, everybody cringes at that, but you got to realize
That's
that
inevitably,
every
that's gonna be the
RV
future.
Every RV that's parked on the Llano is dumping untreated water, wastewater, into Llano's drinking water. Every one of them. They just dump it in. They don't even treat it. They don't even get it to potable level. It just runs out the back of somebody's trailer, fish
Yeah.
camp or whatever. So that's essentially dumping really wastewater into Llano's drinking. They know that's okay. Not if you drink it between here and Llano's not. But if you get to Llano, they're pulling it out, treating it just like we would treat anything coming out of the ground.
Junction, any surface water
So I
plant.
know, but you see, Patty, that's the first reaction everybody has, like, I don't want to drink that. But there's really one water. It's only one water. Some of it has this in it, some of it has that in it, some of it has radon in it, some of it has, that's only one water. So I say that from a conservation measure because I start to see cities, like I said, Marble Falls is one of them, and you mentioned, that's not unheard of because we're flushing our toilets with drinkable water. I mean, some things have to just stop, but we can't change our housing.
If you really look at it, it doesn't matter what water source you have, it's reused water.
Right. Oh, yes, absolutely. Right.
I mean, period.
Right.
At some point and somewhere, it's reused
Evaporation comes
water.
back down. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay.
I've got a few more questions. On page 24, it talks about the residential water customers pay the following surcharges: $10 per first 1,000 gallons, over allocation 25, 35, 50, so forth. So my question is, how is this monitored, and is it done systematically, or how, when there's an allocation and
What page
I'm
you're-
sorry, 24, page 24 on yours.
Okay, I'm 15 on that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's kind of not really a template that TCEQ kind of goes by or whatever, but the only way I see that working is if you implement that all the way at the front office. You know, when billing comes around.
Right.
And they catch it. You know, say Lisa sees, okay, they went over
Well, that was my
their
question.
initial
is,
1,000 gallons.
do we monitor that, and, do we adjust the charges accordingly, or is it something manual that is done? It's not systematic, is it? Not to put you on the spot. I'm asking y'all.
I'm not 100% sure I'm understanding what you're talking about. I mean, the base doesn't change, but the per gallon charge does
I think that's in our rate schedule.
So ours is just based on the rate schedule. This is just nomenclature in this
Yeah,
document.
if you look at the rate and fee schedule,
Can
I think it's the last page nearly.
Can I just let y'all know, the copy that Brandon is working off of is strictly page numbered by the number of pages on his report.
Oh.
In the packet.
I'm sorry.
Because that's the
There's a
original.
smaller
So
number.
he's the upper number. I'm sorry.
I'm the little number in the corner.
Yeah, go to page.
15.
And basically, if you look on the rate and fee schedule at the bottom of the first page, it says 1 of 4.
Right.
It basically breaks it down to monthly base charges 0 to 1K, per K gallon to 10K, so on and so
So
forth.
then we don't have anything to do with this piece of it. Okay, perfect.
That's just a suggestion, but this is what they go by.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, the rate fee schedule is adjusted.
It's per thousand. Per
The
thousand.
more you use, the higher. the
Right.
per gallon is.
Okay. All right, and then, and I talked with you briefly before we walked in here, so I want to make sure I've got this right in terms, so if you go to page 9 of 12 on yours, on the supplement in the back, it's the utility profile for retail water supplier.
Okay, so it'd be like page 40 on our language.
Yeah, 40 on ours, 9 to 12 on his.
Because our 40 is the pages in the book.
Board.
Okay, so I want to make sure I understand this correctly. So in order to get the water loss or calculate the water loss, you take the water produced less the water billed, right? Gives you a net total, and that is the water loss, correct?
Correct.
Okay. So then I had Lisa send me last year's, and if you look at that table, it said 2023 total water loss gallons,
Are
17
you
million.
on E or F?
E, sorry.
Okay.
Okay. So I took the numbers that Lisa sent, and the water produced was 181,108,247. I subtracted the water billed, which was 160 million, and it came out to 20,426,511, which is different than the 17,347, which is why I'm asking, am I looking at that correctly? Because I showed a 13%.
I'm sure there's other that go into it on the actual website, because the website doesn't look anything like this.
Okay.
I mean, it's basically just blocks with writing next to it, and it auto-populates, and it automatically does the, line 6 plus 7 plus 9 divided by 3, so on and so forth on all the lines. So I'm not exactly sure on,
Okay.
all I know is the numbers that I got that I inputted into
Mm-hmm.
here are exactly what Lisa had given me.
Well, and the numbers that Lisa gave him today were off of a fiscal year, not a calendar year, so.
Yeah, I do everything off calendar year.
Right.
This is a calendar,
so
this was
that's
from
the problem.
January 1 to December 31.
Yeah.
Okay.
So that report would be wrong.
Okay, so then my other question, that answers that. So I came up with a totally different number on average monthly water usage.
And that would be the same,
Yeah.
Yes,
So,
sir.
okay.
because y'all are still October 31 to November 1. Yeah.
I mainly just want to make sure. So
Yeah.
if I took the calendar year, I'd probably come up with the same total.
And I'd be more than happy to sit down with you and share. I've got all the files still on my computer and everything, so I mean,
Okay.
if that's something you'd like to
But
sit down.
this should be calculating what known loss we have estimated, correct?
Correct.
Or is this calculating a known loss?
That's calculating water
I mean,
loss,
that's based off
Based off of the
production
number.
and sales,
correct, based off the numbers given to me by the city of Mason
okay?
and numbers off Water Development Board, which a lot of this isn't
So if
from
we have a
Water
few
Development.
meters that are not reading correctly, that's
Correct.
basically a loss, or if it's reading to our advantage, it's a
Correct.
non-loss, okay?
Oh, that was I'm sorry, I had
Next
one more question. So how do we,
Everybody gets 6 questions.
Yeah. Hey, hold on.
Good, I got 5 more.
How do we identify the meters that aren't working and,
Through our working metering software.
okay, so it's automatic and it's,
Correct. From my experience
Software.
with the computer software that city uses, is it'll actually throw up a little red flag next to every meter that does not ding.
perfect.
And at the end, when you get through reading meters, it'll say 1,279 out of 1,280 meters read. That way you can, you
Okay.
know exactly where to go.
And I'm not real sure where it is in the report, but I noticed that, I believe our commercial meters, we get them recalibrated every year, is what it said in the report? And
Well,
then
no,
residential every 5 years, is that just a
Ma-
standard?
Master meters, all your master meters, and I was just looking at that page, but your master meters and your residential meters only get calibrated as needed. So we used to do a deal where, say you were showing you had you were using too much water. We would actually send that meter off and get it checked and calibrated. And if it was correct, then you owed us the money
Right,
for
right,
sending it off.
right.
But with these new electronic meters, we hadn't done that in years.
Okay, so this is just for TCEQ?
Yeah. Well, now your production meters, like every single
Yes,
one
yes.
of the wells 1, 3, 4, 5, 7, 8, and the HMO building all have what they call a master meter on it. And it's a meter directly at the wellhead that keeps track of every drop of water that is pumped out of that well.
Right.
And that's where, if
That's
you look
the
on
water
that
produced.
page, 11 of 12, number 4, no, that's wastewater, never mind. I know it's in here.
But you're gonna lose some of that too, don't you? When you're processing that, do you lose some there off the wellhead?
And that's what I was gonna bring up on that page that I just asked about. 11 of 12, Patty said somebody had a question on the significant increase from 2021 of wastewater, a total of 51 million gallons.
Yeah.
And then in 2022, we jumped to 70.5 million.
Right.
Yeah.
And then in 2023, we dropped back down to 46 million. In 2022 is when HMO building came online and we began backwashing weekly. So you're burning probably, it's close to 8,000 gallons a cell. So you got 4 cells, so you're looking at about 25,000 gallons of water every time you backwash.
What, how
And-
much?
About 25,000,
Wow, and how often do you backwash?
should be being done weekly,
Okay.
if not more, with water quality issues or water
Does
color
it
issues.
count and backwash when it's necessary? It's automatic?
Well, inside the pilot program that TCEQ says, when we design this HMO plant, it says that the city of Mason has to backwash every 24 hours.
Oh, wow.
Is there a trial period? Is that from day on?
Oh, it's y'all's now.
It's all
But
out? That's the deal.
that's what they still want you to backwash. So back, when did I make that spreadsheet? Been a couple months ago? I built a spreadsheet for the operators at the city of Mason that basically auto-populates month to month and month to month, that helps them keep track of exactly how many gallons they're backwashing. It takes into account how many gallons were pumped from wells 4, 7, and 8, 3, 4, 7, and 8, and then it subtracts it from the totalizing meter leaving the HMO plant, and that will give you how many gallons you're kicking to waste. But every time, it's gonna be a little more than that 25,000, that's just strictly backwash. So every time you switch cells, when it's running, because it alternates tanks when it's running, you got 2 different vessels. When it runs, it does a rinse cycle on it and kicks filter to waste before it ever goes into production. So realistically, you're probably losing closer to 30,000 gallons.
figured in maybe even 40,000. It's just hard to tell on that.
So 30
much,
times 4 that's a month's worth of water.
Correct.
So here's another.
If you're backwashing,
Well, as you're supposed to be.
As you're
Well,
supposed to.
we're assuming we're playing by the rules.
yes, sir.
So I guess my question again goes, in a conservation plan, if you're losing that much water for backwashing, is there a reason to try to capture that water and run it back through the system
You can't
again?
do it. Because when you backwash, you're rinsing out all the radionuclides. You would just be putting the radionuclides right back in your system.
Is it good for anything like irrigating? Nothing.
I tried and tried when we first started this project back in 17, 18, somewhere around in there. I tried and tried to get TCQ to approve one of two things: an injection well to put the waste back into the ground, or let us kick it to the creek right behind. But they were adamant about it going to
Through your process.
to the circulation,
Right.
which to me doesn't make any sense, because a normal aeration basin lagoon does absolutely nothing to strip radionuclides out of the water. So all you're essentially doing is putting it in the creek, going down, and
Going on through.
it's saturating back in.
Back down the ground.
I mean, that's neither here nor there, but
There's greater minds, right?
that's it.
So this is, the conservation plan is really the opposite of that, really, I guess, involving TCQ. We're not,
Yes.
we're not trying to maximize the use of our water. They just got some rules that say you can't do that.
Yeah.
And that's not up for discussion.
And there's another entity that limits you on your water usage also. It's the Hickory Underground Aquifer Association.
And they're not making any new water.
Exactly.
Right.
And I do work for the city of San Angelo.
Yes.
That has 17 wells in the Hickory. Luckily, only 2 of them are online right now. So they're pumping less than 2 million gallons a month out of the Hickory right now.
And they're the biggest straw in the pot, in our bucket, isn't it? I mean, single one.
If they were up to production.
Uh-huh.
But Brady's got 7 wells in the Hickory. And they've got a big radionuclide reduction system plant fixing to come online also.
Well, thank you. That was all the questions I had.
All right.
Appreciate
yeah.
it.
Anybody else?
On the drought contingency plan, does EHT help us to establish when we hit like stage 1 or stage 2? Or do our people watch that and see when we're like 75% below tank storage levels?
That would be more of an in-house monitoring, especially during the billing cycles and everything like that. 'Cause you can tell if you're billing out, and I'm just throwing a number out there, if you're usually billing out $280,000 worth of water, and then all of a sudden you jump to $460,000 of water a month, you're bumping the limit pretty good.
So you're calculating it not necessarily by what this is saying, percentage of tank for a 3-day period. You're really calculating it by what's being used.
The way I
What
used to
meters
watch it was the daily well readings. The guys go through and every morning they pull a reading off of every well, every totalizer.
Right.
And you can look at that and say, hey, this well usually pumps 750,000 gallons, and now we're pumping 2.2 million gallons. And you keep an eye on it for a couple, 3 days, and if you're, steadily climbing or you get that peak and plateaued off, then you can start going into your restrictions.
So it's what your wells are producing.
Correct.
More than what your storage levels are.
Yeah, well, because the what the wells are producing is what's putting in your storage tanks.
Right.
So there's no other. You're not getting water from anywhere else.
Besides that 45 or 25,000 we flush.
Yeah, but I don't think
It
you
should
want to
be
drink
pretty
that.
close. So they
Yes,
can
sir.
tell, and then when we, like we're in stage 1, and when we get below that level, then we can discontinue that contingency and go back to normal.
Yes.
And I haven't seen since I've been here that we ever go back to normal.
No.
And I think that's psychological maybe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay. So you don't recommend that?
No, sir.
Okay. Page 1 of 12 of yours, we still have John Palacio listed as a contact. and that is on the utility profile for retail water suppliers. So I assume that needs to be changed.
Okay, I did notice that, and I was leaving it at is, being that we're at an interim phase right now. And as soon as one gets hired or
Then we can
appointed,
change
it basically just logging into a website and updating it.
Thank you.
And then we can print off and send you all the updated copy.
Who is this sent to?
I'm sorry?
Is this sent to TCEQ, your report?
Yes, sir. It's sent to TCEQ, Texas Water Development Board, EPA, Region F Water Group, and Hickory also has access to it. We don't send it directly to them, but they have access through TCEQ.
So do you think it's in our best interest to put a name in there like the mayor's name or somebody?
Well, you got two over there,
Well, I'd hate for them to say, well, you've been sending this to me for 3 months and this guy doesn't
Yeah,
even,
I mean-
doesn't work there in 4 months.
We can, I mean, it's really preference to y'all. I mean, I know you have co-interims right now, and it only allows for one person in it, so I wasn't sure who to put in it.
No, I understand.
We can
And,
update it.
and most of them, not most of them, all of them never have the mayor on it.
No, I can understand why,
It's
but
always,
most
you know,
of them usually have at
utility
least a city
director or-
manager, a public works director, or a
Public works
assistant
director or city manager.
somebody that's answering the phone, but, okay.
So on the HMO, what's its capacity to process a day?
It's set up for 750 gallons a minute, so whatever 750 times 24 is,
A minute?
Coach.
There's a mathematician over there.
60 times 24, okay. But you
Your
have-
history in government.
If you meet that max, then you've got to make sure that the wells that are not going through there are at the correct ratio, right?
Correct, and that's one thing that we had it set up, and I'm not sure if it's still set up that way, but you've got 4 wells feeding that HMO plant. 2 are better than the other 2. And we would set it up to where you would have one not as good with one good one. And that would put us up around the 600 gallon minute mark. And then when those 2 shut off, the next cycle, the other 2 would come back on. And it would also switch. You've got 2 vessels in there, each vessel has 2 cells, and it would just, it alternates with each well.
Anna, you have any questions?
No, sir, but I'm ready to make a motion.
Please.
Well, Paul hadn't got to ask any
Well,
questions
neither
yet.
did I, but I mean, I pretty much understand we do this every 5 years.
Any other questions for Brandon?
I appreciate all your information.
Yes,
and
thank you.
I know that even though you don't work for the city, I know you still have our back.
And one of the things that,
Yes, sir, absolutely.
one of the things that changed in here also was the flushing of the water hydrants fire hydrants and the dead end lines.
One thing that John and I had always fought with TCQ over was, because you're supposed to be doing quarterly flushes, quarterly dead end flushes. And something that we fought TCQ over and over about was, you want us to flush all these hydrants and waste water on the ground when we've got stage 3 or stage 4 restrictions going. And they were like, nope, that's in TAC 290, you gotta flush dead end fire hydrants. So it's like, it doesn't make any sense. You're gonna penalize us for, not conserving water, but yet you're gonna penalize us for flushing fire hydrants. And we never got anywhere with it, but every investigation, every 3 years, we'd go round and round with them.
But with this cause that we can flush them, we have to back off as we go from 2 to 3,
Yeah.
or if we ever got to 4.
And that says you have to flush them because that's a TAC 290 rule. That's way over me or you or anything. That's
Right.
state of Texas legislation saying that you have to flush due to TAC 290.
But we haven't been flushing them.
No comment.
Next.
Yeah.
I'll accept the motion.
I make the motion.
Yes, ma'am.
In the motion, could y'all please state to approve that, if that's what you want to do, including resolution number 24-389, because that is in the plan.
Yeah, I saw that resolution.
Yeah, there
I
should
didn't
be a
know there was
resolution in
number.
the back of the WCP that needs to be signed.
And that is the number that will be dedicated
Okay.
to that resolution.
What's the number?
24-389.
And I believe you'll send that back to EHT, and then we will submit it to
Like the last page.
XYZ, on and on.
Okay, so I make a motion that we accept the City of Mason Water Conservation Drought Contingency Plan dated May 2024, including the resolution 24-389.
I second it.
Okay, got a motion and seconded. A motion made Commissioner Velez, seconded by Commissioner Smith. And that is that we approve the Water Conservation and Drought Contingency Plan, including signing Resolution 24-389. Further discussion?
So is it not 24,388?
No, sir. That's going to be later in the...
Oh, you're right, you're right.
24,388 has
you're
to
right.
do with the parade.
I just saw it. My bad.
Any further discussion?
Nope.
All those in favor, raise your right hand. 5-4-0 against.
All right, thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Thank
Appreciate
you.
it, Brandon.
You gotta know not to argue with Patty.
Place now. This one Pete's been waiting on patiently. Item number 4, discussion and action. Consider and approve, deny for street paving project, the bids for 2024. And that is item number 4. And Pete, do you want to present that to us? A little information? Or is there anything to present? We only have one bid, apparently.
Yes, one bid only. I guess we were, the specs on that was, we're gonna do a single shot on, with a chip seal. That's what we were going for, and, the only bid we got was from, Ketter, Allen County, which they've done the last, maybe the last couple of years. Done a really good job. So I think you all know the streets that we're gonna pave, right?
Yes.
You all have that list there?
Yes.
That hasn't changed?
So we'll be able to do all of those with,
Yes, that's
with the bid and stay in budget?
target Streets, yes, on the bid. The total bid was $118,900.
What do we have budgeted, 120?
Yep.
Yes. And once again, I'd like to stress that they always come work with us. I'm thankful that they stepped up. And did this. Now, also keep in mind that they're gonna try to get us in the end of May or somewhere in maybe the first part of June. If they can't get us in, then they'll have to wait till next year.
Oh.
So, because they got a big contract with TechDOT.
Yeah.
So they used to do us in the fall, September, early October. That didn't happen because of the TechDOT contract. But they're trying to squeeze us in. They weren't gonna even consider us. He had told us, well, we can't.
Yeah, I remember that. I was wondering why that was,
Yeah. Then he felt bad because he says he likes to help Mason, they want to help Mason, and they gonna try to squeeze us in. So that's where we're at. And hopefully now that we got the bid and if we get it approved, then I can call and see where we're at as far as scheduling.
You can be ready in time?
Yes, yes. We've had a lot of other issues going on, trees falling, I mean, crazy, crazy.
the weather,
I
yeah.
haven't seen this many trees lost at the city park and in town.
Right.
Over the weekend, we lost 3 trees in town.
Wow.
3 big old trees.
Huh.
So all that sets us back. We're still chipping away and getting
Right.
ready. And we'll be all right. It'll be a tight squeeze, but we'll get it. And like I said, as soon as we find out the process here is approved, then I can get with Jim Brandenburger and find out where they're at with us. And I can let you all know that they're
If I recall correctly, it was 6 streets, right?
yes, it was,
Colorado,
Colorado. It was,
Brazos,
not Colorado, it was, Nueces,
Oasis.
Brazos Street, part of Brazos, with the next Waxman.
Langberg.
Well, what is that other street?
We
Sabine?
approved all those streets at our previous meetings. when they
Yeah,
presented.
I
You
just
don't
remember 6 streets,
Yeah,
right?
it was like,
Yep.
yeah, they're all.
It's the north end of Brazos, and then you've got Nueces, you've got Loving Street, a little section of Loving.
Mhm.
You've got another small section on Cedar Street. And you've got Lambert Lane, which is kind of a dead end. Then we hop over to Mesquite, go off Mesquite. Then we hop over to the other side of town and we do Ritter Street, the section, the upper section of Ritter Street, and then the whole section of Lambert Street.
Lindbergh. Okay,
It's pretty bad.
thank you.
And then the last road was the Army Park Road, between 1 through 11. That road was heavily traveled during the baseball seasons and all that. And the RVers use it as well during the roundup and all the victory events. That's one of the heaviest traveled roads, that's why we're losing it.
Okay.
Before I make a motion, Mayor, I just want to say thank you, Pete, because I know y'all do a really good job working. I was impressed with the park. I went after I was notified about all the trees. There was a lot of damage at the city park. And these
lot.
guys all went to work right away and were able to get it done. Thank you.
Absolutely.
Thank you very much. And one thing I would like to say is that it's not just the street and parks, it's every department that comes together.
Yep.
A team effort.
We have that chemistry that if something's going on in the electric department, they need help, we all get you. And vice versa.
Awesome.
So
Yep.
we have a great team right now. I'm proud of these guys. A lot of them are young, but they're being trained to understand what we're here for, the purpose to serve the citizens. Amazing.
Yep.
Good.
And they're buying into that. Yeah, I'm proud of them.
Yep. Me too.
We thank you for your
Yeah.
leadership.
Appreciate
Being a
it.
Senior employee.
I'm just one of the leaders, like I said. We got other ones, and I'm very thankful for them.
Absolutely.
And these ladies do, and you all. Without your support, you can't get going.
Well, thank you, Pete.
We appreciate you all.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank-
May I
Any
make
further
a
questions?
motion? No, I'm
I'll
sorry.
accept your
I
motion.
make a motion that we approve the bid for a street paving project for 2024 with Alan Keller.
I'll second it.
Commissioner Keller seconds it. Commissioner Bliss make the motion that we accept the bid that we got from Alan Keller on the street paving project 2024. Further discussion, questions?
I have a question. I think we've discussed this at length, but I'm wondering why the city is not listed as additionally insured on this copy of this insurance copy we have. Or unless I overlooked it.
They have listed this in the past, I'm not, I don't see it on here, but that's something that we can definitely ask them
Nope.
tomorrow when we.
I think it's required in our contract, isn't it? That it's put on there. They usually don't put it on there till they awarded the contract. And we're using standard contract with them, correct? Okay.
We can make that included in the motion that we'll get the updated version.
Yeah, absolutely, yeah. Okay, do you have a motion and second? No further discussion? All those in favor, raise your right hand. Have 5-4-0 against.
Thank you, Pete.
Thanks.
Absolutely. Item number 5, consider and approve or deny Resolution 24-388, agreement for temporary closure of state right-of-way for Mason Roundup Parade, an event scheduled for July 13th, 2024, and this is requirement by the state to do this. I don't know if we've had to do this before, but they had a whole list of things Chamber of Commerce having to put together, so it's kind of just housekeeping. Any discussion on that?
No, I make a motion that we accept Resolution 24-388. Let's see, hold on.
Second. Commissioner Smith seconded the motion. Further discussion? There's no further discussion. All those in favor of this resolution 24-388 for the street closure for the Roundup Parade, raise your right hand. 5-4-0 against. Next item on the agenda is consent agenda. Do you have some comments that you would like to make? Patty had an extensive consent agenda emailed to everyone, a lot of minutes and things since we've had so many meetings, and she's done a great job keeping up. Nothing particular? Well, I'd like to say one thing. We did get approval because since we did the ramps and the step units, the aluminum units there on around the square, we've been working with TxDOT about getting a handicap van assigned area. And we got written approval from them yesterday to allow us to do that, and that way we'll take 3 spots, narrow those down to 8, and allow a 5-foot void area there for vans to be able to exit with wheelchairs, and they will be placed at the foot of those ramps. So we did have a good visit with them also about future plans and ideals. I'll share some of that with you later, Robert. It looks very positive. They like our desire to really work with them and try to work on some of our safety, transportation safety issues. That's the only thing that I've got. Well, I do have one more thing. Patty, you have anything, or are you okay? Okay.
Do you want me to announce,
Yes, go ahead.
at the May 14th meeting, the commission extended a contract or an offer to Amanda Hill for the city administrator position. We just heard today that she has not accepted the offer. She is wanting to stay in Rusk. I don't think any fault through the city. I think she just weighed her options and things turned out a little bit differently in her favor in the election process previously this month, and so she opted to stay where she was.
So Patty's going to take some much needed leave next week, but the only meeting time we might have would be next Tuesday. Monday's going to be a holiday. If we wanted to call a special meeting next Tuesday evening, not look at your calendars and see if that's something that we could be agreeable to do. And that way we can discuss your options and see how we want to move forward.
Mayor, do you want to see if Improtec can get us that bid if we do schedule a meeting for Tuesday, that we can go
That'd
ahead
be good.
and proceed
Two
with
birds
that?
with one stone, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
The bid process for the lift station.
Absolutely, yes. Yeah, we can go ahead and list that, and hopefully they'll be ready before we can move forward on that. Kind of had a misfire. We lost 30 days on that thing, just getting the bids out properly, and so running behind. And I know Ken's trying to do everything he can to keep us moving forward. So we will have that on that, and if something else comes up, we'll talk about that, or you have something you'd want to put on the agenda. But I think we'll have a full executive session as it is. Anything else?
The 28th is when our next meeting is?
28th?
That would be on the 28th, yes. at 5:30.
Does that work for everybody?
Everybody good? Okay. So we'll set a special meeting for then. That'll finish our month out. Any other questions, discussion about the consent agenda? If not, I accept a motion.
I make a motion, we accept this consent agenda as presented.
We got a motion and seconded by Commissioner Rayburn. Motion was made by Commissioner Velez. Any further discussion on consent agenda? If not, if you're in favor of it, say aye.
Aye.
5-4, I didn't hear any against. Any further business?
I just want to thank Pete also. I was out at while I was still in meeting, I was also at City Park that morning at 8:30, and I looked at the trees close because I wanted to learn from that. And I will say, there's sometimes you see limbs in trees and over picnic tables, sometimes you can see them, and sometimes they're 60 feet in the air, and sometimes it's easier to move a concrete picnic table than it is to move a tree limb. But I will say this, most of the trees, everything I saw except a few broken limbs, had hidden structural damage, hollow trees where the entire perimeter of the tree, the callus, the entire zone, it was not detectable. So there's things that just happen that no fault of Pete or any of his guys for not seeing it. I was surprised to see some of the trees that looked big and were mostly hollow in the center when they broke. So there's nothing you can do about that. You just try to minimize your risk. But I'll say that Pete and them did, like you said, did just an absolute stellar job. And 4 or 5 hours later, I went out there and I never knew a storm had happened. So it was really all hands on deck. Great job. Great job.
I make a motion to adjourn.
I'll second that.
We have a motion by Commissioner Velez, seconded by Commissioner Keller to adjourn. No further discussion. All those in favor say aye. Aye. All those opposed say nay. 5 ayes. We are done.